Some shocking things that renowned country music star Willie Nelson said about fellow musician Kris Kristofferson have recently been in the news. Willie's words are making waves, and all of a sudden Kristofferson fans are looking at his reputation again. And believe me, Willie really got into it, talking about how great Kris's music is. The subtle but huge effect he's had on country music, and, get ready for this, his personal view on Kris's place among the music greats. Put on your headphones because this movie will show you what really happened when Willie Nelson spoke out. The shocking news is that Willie Nelson, the famous country music star, has always been known for his easygoing personality, rebellious spirit, and classic songs that make you want to sip sweet tea on a front porch. But not long ago, he shocked everyone by saying something unexpected about Kris Kristofferson, his close friend and work partner. It wasn't just a short mention, it was a full-on reveal that sent shockwaves through the world of song. Without missing a beat, Willie sat down for an interview and easily dropped the bomb that changed the way many people think about Kristofferson's legacy. What did Willie say that made everyone talk? Nelson said that Kristofferson is one of the. Now, if that doesn't hit you, keep in mind that this is Willie Nelson himself saying it. A guy who wrote some of the most famous country music songs. Songs that have been played over and over again for decades. You have to pay attention when a great songwriter like Willie Nelson calls someone else a great. Willie did something even more important, he went on. Would put Kristofferson on the same level as famous singer-songwriters like Hank Williams and Merle Haggard. Think about that. In Willie's mind, Kristofferson is now on the same stage as two of the most famous country music artists of all time. You might ask, what's the big deal actually? It's not just the words that matter, it's also what they mean. Willie and Kris met through work, but they are more than that. They are friends in the music world. They've been through good times and bad together for decades because they've both been through the ups and downs of the music business. These guys don't just want to make hits, they live the music they write, with all of its raw feeling. Willie means it when he says that Kristofferson's songs, along with those of Billy Joe Shaver, helped shape country music. Not just giving someone a compliment. He knows this because he has seen his friend put his whole heart into every song for years. Plus, how often do you see one famous person praise another in this way? When Muhammad Ali calls another fighter the best of all time, it doesn't happen very often. Even though Willie is proud of his own work, it's clear that he finds something in Kristofferson's music that moves and inspires people all over the world. Isn't it cool when someone who has done so much is still humble enough to recognize the genius of another artist? Let's talk about how people felt about it now. When Willie said those things, you'd think the internet caught fire. New and old fans alike filled social media with their thoughts, with some being shocked and others. They talked about how they've always known Kris was special. Even Kris's old songs were listened to by some with fresh ears, and words they thought they already knew were gone. Found whole new meanings in things they thought they knew by heart. Everyone wanted to relearn what they might have missed about Kris's music all these years. It was like someone turned on a light. It wasn't just the fans, though. People who like country music started to weigh in. One of the first people to agree with Willie was none other than Dolly Parton. When they said something that felt just as. To prove it, she said, Kris has always been one of the most honest songwriters I know. Knowing what he was going through makes his work even more remarkable. When Dolly Parton herself says nice things about you, you remember them forever. It wasn't just Dolly either. As more artists came forward, they told their own stories about how Kris's music had touched them, has had on them over the years, which shows how widespread his effect is in the country music scene. People were impressed by Willie's words, but they also made people think about something deeper: the stresses of fame and how it affects relationships. There wasn't always glitz and glamour in Kris's work. He had problems in his personal and work life, but those problems found their way into his songs, making the lyrics more real and relatable. Since then, people who work in the music business have said that Kristofferson's problems weren't special. They say that many artists face similar problems, but not all of them turn their problems into art like Kris did. This has caused a bigger discussion about how artists are helped or not helped when they are having a hard time. What would Kris's music be like if he didn't have to go through those hard times? Who? Who knows? But it does make you value his path even more. In the end, Willie Nelson's surprise comment about Kris Kristofferson did more than just add to the already amazing legacy of his friend. It made me think, admire, and even feel a little amazed. It made everyone remember that, even though the world is full of music stars, some artists still don't get the attention they deserve. But it looks like Kris is finally getting his time in the sun thanks to Willie. Actually, isn't that what makes? Why are friendships like theirs so lovely? At age 91, Willie Nelson just broke his quiet, and everyone is shocked by what he said. What could the famous country music singer say now that he's been quiet for so long? Whatever it is, it's in the news, and fans can't wait to find out more. Please stay with us until the end, because Nelson's words will stun you, and trust me, this is one. A surprise you won't want to miss. Kris Kristofferson is a genius when it comes to writing songs. His lyrics are so powerful that even the simplest words can hit you right in the gut. That's what makes his songs so great. It's not him. Doesn't use fancy or highly complicated language. Instead, he uses simple melodies and standard structures that let the words stand out. You might think that Kristofferson is limited by how easy things are, but that's not the case. What makes his songs so good is how simple they are, very deep. It sounds like he picked each word with great care, like he knows that each phrase needs to have emotional weight. Another thing is that his words are so vivid in how they describe things. With his words, he can make you feel like you're right there, living the moment he's writing about, singing about. Let's look at Sunday Morning Coming Down Well. I woke up Sunday morning with no way to hold my head that didn't hurt. Makes you think of that awful hangover morning right away, doesn't it? You can almost feel the guilt and fog in your head and heart. How is he? That with only a few words? He seems to be very good at capturing feelings we've all had but never knew how to say. His poetic style can make even the most personal event seem like it affects everyone. When you hear his music, it's almost like he's talking about something deep inside all of us that we can all relate to. To be honest, isn't that what makes a song classic? Kris Kristofferson's. His songs still have a lot of power after all these years because he was able to find these universal truths in daily life. It's not just sharing stories, it's connecting with people in a way that not many songwriters can. Let's talk about some of his most powerful songs now. And he has so many songs that have made history in the music world that it's hard to know where to begin. But if we had to choose, Frank and I, McGee would be at the top of the list. Anyone who has heard that song has felt both free and sad at the same time. It's such a beautiful and sad trip from being in love to losing someone. Most people know Janis Joplin's version. But let's not forget that Kristofferson wrote the song. There's also Sunday Morning Coming Down, which isn't just a fan favorite, but Bob Dylan also gave it a big thumbs up and said it was great. Since Dylan doesn't say things like that often, you know this song is very important. It's an honest look at what happens when you overindulge and then wake up to the harsh light of reality after trying to escape it all night. Is one of those times in songwriting that makes you stop and think. The song starts off like a plea for more, something better. Don't we all feel that way sometimes? Kristofferson is great at finding the right balance between showing the real, dirty side of life and giving people a tiny bit of hope. Kris writes about love, death, redemption, and other things that come up in all of our lives. You feel like he's talking to a deep part of your soul through his words. The magic of Kristofferson is like that. Among other things, he writes about how messy life is for people. No matter if you're listening in the 1970s or now, it still seems important in some way. Lyrics by Kris Kristofferson don't just stay in your head, they live there, in the back of your mind, long after the song is over. These lines keep coming back to you, making you think about what they mean and how they apply to your life. Artists who can do that don't come along very often. His writing songs has more to it than just telling stories. It has to make you feel those stories, make them your own. So the next time you hear a Kris Kristofferson song, pay close attention. You can find yourself in what he says. There was a famous country music supergroup called the Highwaymen. Their story is one of those historical events that seems almost too good to be true, but it happened, and it will forever change country music. What if the biggest names in country music worked together, almost by accident, to make something that changed everything? The same thing happened to Kris Kristofferson, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and Willie Nelson. The names of these guys were already well known, but fate brought them together in the strangest way. All of this began in 1984, when one of Johnny Cash's Christmas shows was being filmed in Montreux, Switzerland. They'd relax and tell stories after long days on set and play music. And magic happens when that many talented people are in the same place. They must have had no idea how famous that little act of kindness would become. Back in the US, the idea of working together was still new in their minds, and before anyone could say no, they did it. You guessed it, they were in the studio with Chips Moman, the producer. How on earth do you even begin to name something when you have those four legends? They chose the Highwaymen because it sounds like the Jimmy Webb song Highwaymen. It was great, and it wasn't just the group's name, it was also the name of their first album. What a brilliant idea, huh? That tune. Their first song, Highwaymen, went straight to the top of the country charts. You know it's a special song when you hear it. But now things get really interesting. How do four huge stars with such different personalities make it work? That was part of the magic, though. Each person brought something different to the table. Willie Nelson's easygoing, smooth singing, Johnny Cash's deep, powerful voice, Waylon Jennings' tough guy sound, and Kris Kristofferson's dreamy soul. Together they could not be stopped. The best part, even when their ideas were different, they valued each other. Remember how everyone was shocked when Willie Nelson recently talked about Kris Kristofferson's work? Even now, it's clear that they had a strong bond. They may not have agreed on how to be creative, but who wouldn't? That many smart and talented people in one room. But in the end, their bond was stronger than any argument. Waylon Jennings' wife, Jessie Coulter, once told a story about how the group worked. She said Kris Kristofferson was very interested in politics, but Waylon, not really. Waylon didn't think artists should ever use their fame to talk about politics, which, as you can see, I can see how that might have upset some people. But here's the thing, they got each other. Kris didn't try to push, and Waylon didn't mind that. The Highwaymen were able to stay together because they respected each other. They made a sound that was very different. There was country, rock, folk, and a lot of other styles in it. It felt both new and old at the same time. Their songs? They made a strong attack. At the time, you didn't hear a lot of mainstream country music that talked about family problems, politics, or personal battles, but that's what made them unique. They were brave enough to go there. It seems like they knew they had a stage and wanted to do more with it than just make hits. Hits. And it wasn't just their songs that had an effect on people. The Highwaymen made it possible for other country music groups to work together in the future. These artists proved that you can make something new and exciting with other famous artists, even if you're already famous. They were living proof that supergroups could work, and boy, did they ever. Their work influenced a whole new group of. Many more people heard country music because of these acts. The things they did are still being done today. Even if the artists don't always know it, you can hear their impact in country music today. Their records are being sold again, and every day more people find them and become fans. It's not just the music either. The Highwaymen showed what's possible when you put together people with different skills and let them shine. Do what they want. The Country Music Hall of Fame honored them in 2001, which was a huge honor. Like the business world confirming what fans had known for years, these guys were heroes. Now, think about this: Willie Nelson is the only member of the Highwaymen who is still alive. That should be enough to make you stop and think about how this group affected people. Willie finally spoke out about Kris Kristofferson and the group's work not long ago, and let me tell you, it was strong. Willie's words are very important because he's been through it all and seen it all. Ups and downs of this trip. It makes you think of how unique the Highwaymen were and how much they changed country music. Without them, would country music be the same now? Most likely not. They were more than just a band. The Highwaymen were a movement. Even after many years, their songs, legacy, and friendship are still moving people. There's big news from Willie Nelson that no one saw coming. The famous musician has finally talked about some things that he had been keeping to himself for years, and now everyone wants to know more. We now know what it was, but more needs to be shown. Stay with us until we tell you the whole story behind this shocking news. Let's learn about the history of the band that brought Willie Nelson and Kris Kristofferson together before we start. A. Friendship for all time. Willie Nelson and Kris Kristofferson's friendship has been one of those legendary ties that goes beyond just working in the same field. It all began in the early 1970s, when both of them were making a name for themselves in country music. But this wasn't your normal "we're both famous, let's hang out" situation. There was more of it. They met as artists who were making their own roots and going against what the Nashville machine was doing. As they sat there, the two rebels talked about life, music, and how they could change the business. They were more than just artists, they were like-minded people. Now, Willie Nelson recently spoke out, shocking everyone by saying just how different their pasts really were. Willie? He was born and raised in Abbott, Texas. As a child, he worked on farms, picked cotton, and played guitar whenever he could. From the start, he was a simple, honest person. Until then, Kris, he came from A. And to top it off, his father is a general in the Air Force. What a different way to grow up, huh? Kris's childhood was very strict, ordered, and tense, and standards were very high. I find it hard to believe that these two very different people are on the same path to becoming country music stars. Their stories began in very different places, but they were both. People like country music for one easy reason: it tells stories. That's what made them go. Willie's style was rough and dirty, and Kris's words were poetic and introspective. Both wanted to bring something real to the table. They became friends because they were both fed up with the slick, formulaic Nashville sound that was taking over the radio at the time. Both of them must have looked at the other and thought, "We can do better than this," and they did when they helped start the outlaw country movement. Together with greats like Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings, they broke all the rules and took country music back to its roots, giving it back the rough edge it had lost. Though they were friends about music, they also knew each other on a personal level. Willie and Kris both knew what it was like to struggle with fame and raising a family at the same time. For real, that's not easy. Can you imagine having to be a good dad and husband while also going on tour and making songs? It must have been hard on their personal lives, but that's what brought them together. Really shone. They turned to each other during some of the worst times, like when they were struggling with addiction or the constant stress of their jobs. Willie just recently said that Kris always felt guilty and regretted things, even though he was very successful. Who would have thought? Kris Kristofferson, the singer of all those hits, feels like he failed as a father and husband because he was on the road so much. He told Willie that, and it's one of those times that shows how special their friendship was. The music is another thing. When you talk about Willie and Kris, you can't help but talk about how much they moved each other. When they worked together as the Highwaymen, it changed not only their lives but also country music as a whole. There was more to the Highwaymen than just a band. They were a group of friends who got together to make something bigger than themselves. Willie and Kris never stopped working together, even as they got older. They wrote new songs together and gave old favorites a new lease on life. They showed that being artistic doesn't go out of style. Not only did they inspire each other, she gave hope to a whole generation of country artists who wanted to break out of the mold and say important things with their songs. Willie Nelson has always been proud of his friend Kris Kristofferson, but in his most recent news, he really went to the next level by calling Kris one of the greatest songwriters of all time. The fact that Willie would say that in public shows how much Kris's songwriting genius affected not only Willie but also the whole music world. Business. Now that Willie is the only member of the Highwaymen still alive, his latest thoughts on his friendship with Kris hit even harder. It's no longer just about the song. The song is about remembering how lucky they are to have had a friend like that for so long and all the good and bad times they went through together. It's not just a respect to Kris that Willie broke his silence and told these personal stories. To remember the history they made together. Kristofferson's effects on country music. Kris Kristofferson had a huge effect on country music. If you've ever been interested in the genre even a little, you'll understand how far his influence goes. He brought a new way of writing songs to the world of country music, which will never be the same. When Willie, a live legend in his own right. When someone publicly proclaims Kris as one of the greatest songwriters of all time, you know it's not just nice words, it's a huge acknowledgement of how great he is. Kristofferson had an amazing ability to combine simple ideas with deep ones. A few well-chosen words in his songs could get right to the heart of things. Doesn't that kind of skill make you wonder what kind of effect he will have? Did to the rest of the business world. But it wasn't just his words. This guy's whole way of writing songs changed the way country music was done. Kristofferson broke all the rules all the way through. He didn't just stick to the usual steps in making country songs. Not like anyone else at the time, he mixed folk, rock, and country in new ways. It's almost like he said, why not get the best? Taking parts of all of these styles and making something completely new. He did. This gave Kristofferson a sound that was all his own and made country music more appealing to a lot more people. Not only did they make music that sounded different, though, Kris was letting them in. People to follow. A whole generation of songwriters were inspired by his desire to take risks with both lyrics and music. They watched Kris work, and it gave them the courage to talk about those tough, sometimes awkward topics in their own work. One example is John Prine, who is also a celebrity in his own right. Wright was an artist that Kristofferson helped out in the beginning. They were friends for decades, and it's not too much of a stretch to say that Kristofferson helped Prine start her career. How cool is it to think that one singing legend could shape another and set off a chain reaction? That made so many other musicians want to take chances with their music. Finally, Willie Nelson spoke about Kris's heritage again, reminding everyone how long-lasting and important it is. He formed the Highwaymen with Willie Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings, which cemented his place in the history of country music even more. And in case you think his job with the Highwaymen was just something extra, don't believe it. People saw that supergroup as a sign of rebellion against the bland country music that was popular in Nashville at the time. You could say, "We're going to do things our way, and the rest of you can either get on board or get left behind." In this way, Kristofferson. He was more than just a guitarist, he was a leader, a teacher, and a revolutionary in the field. There are so many artists who mix genres and deal with serious topics in their lyrics that it's hard to picture what country music would be like without Kristofferson's influence. What if the genre had grown in the same way? Who knows? One thing though. Yes, there is no denying that Christensen had an effect on country music, and it is better for it. His songs, his impact, and the way he made music will continue to influence artists for many years to come. Do you remember a time when one of his songs seemed to speak straight to your soul? That's Kristofferson's power. He can connect with people of all ages and musical tastes in a way that's both unique and real. It's timeless and deep. Isn't that what every great artist wants? He finally cleared the air after years of stories and speculation, but what he said was much more than anyone thought. Willie Nelson said one last thing about his friend, but there's more to it than that. Watch it. Watch it. Wait until the end to find out the whole story behind Nelson's shocking news. Willie Nelson's tribute performance. Since Kris Kristofferson died, Willie Nelson's performance of Last Leaf has become even more meaningful, and it's hard not to cry when you think about it. In the beginning, Nelson picked the song to honor how long he had been in country music. That he's one of the few people left from that important time. This time, though, it feels more like an homage to his old friend and fellow highwayman. Last Leaf is so strong because it's no longer just about Willie Nelson's place in the music world. The unbreakable bond between Nelson and Kristofferson has become a sign of how the highwaymen will live on. That line, "If they cut down this tree, I'll show up in a song," really gets to me. It looks like Nelson tells us that Kristofferson's spirit is still alive in the music, the memories, and every note Nelson plays, even though he is dead. It's really moving, isn't it? This song has changed him so much that you can almost feel it. You could tell that Kristofferson's death affected Willie Nelson when he finally spoke out about it. During his performance of Last Leaf, the way he makes you feel through the song is so clear that you can't help but feel it too. It's turned into a way for Nelson to deal with his sadness and honor the man who was more than just a musical partner. He was a true friend. Their relationship was about a lot more than music. In good times and bad, Nelson and Kristofferson were always there for each other, helping each other out and enjoying the good times. They were connected. There was more to their connection than just work, and it comes through in the way Nelson sings now. His performance of Last Leaf shows how sad it is to be the only one left, but it also honors the amazing legacy they created together. It makes you feel sad and happy at the same time, don't you agree? A lot of people were moved by Nelson's tribute act. A lot of people have on social media to talk about how much the song means to them now that Kristofferson has died. It's even made people talk about important things. One fan wrote, "Listening to Last Leaf hits different now. You can hear the pain and love in every word. The is being talked about. The stresses that come with being famous and how that changes ties with other people." They weren't the only ones who had problems in the business, when you think about it. Nelson and Kristofferson had problems too. Some people who work in the music business have even said that artists need more help, especially as they go through the ups and downs of their jobs. This is a warning that even the most famous people can have problems when they're in the spotlight. In the end, Willie Nelson's What They Do with Last Leaf is more than just a song now. Nelson sees it as personal, but for fans it's become a time to remember together. To honor the accomplishments of both Nelson and Kristofferson to country music, it feels like we're all in this together. The memories of them will live on, not just the music. Isn't that the most beautiful thing about it all? This is the end of the movie. Thanks. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to get more. Click on the movie that comes up next to read more exciting stories. Willie Nelson has been famous for a long time, but now what he said has everyone talking. Why does he want to break his quiet now, after all these years? Is it about his years of work, his family, or something we've never heard of? Hope for. You'll be surprised by the answer. Make sure you watch all the way to the end, because what he finally admitted is shocking fans and people in the music business. Are you ready to be shocked? Willie Nelson just said something shocking. Fans everywhere. Why has the famous country singer kept this secret all this time? And why does he want to speak out now? The news of his statement is shocking everyone in the business, and you're about to learn why. Keep reading as we tell you the shocking facts. Trust me, Nelson's revelation came as a surprise to everyone, and you'll want to hear every word. Do you believe it? Everyone is shocked by what Willie Nelson just said after he broke his quiet. He has been keeping quiet for years, but now he is finally telling the truth, which is much stranger than anyone thought. Does this mean something more personal, or does it change his career? We're about to get into the specifics of his shocking statement, so stay put. What Nelson said will make you question everything you thought you knew about him.